Here we go. Day one of our End My Self-Sabotage 6-Day Challenge. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is so meaningful to me because I honestly, I struggled with self-sabotage for most of my life. And I did it in the form of self-medicating. From the time I was a child, self-medicating with food, self-medicating with television, self-medicating with all kinds of escapes. And then when I became a teenager, I was self-medicating with smoking pot and drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, all kinds of ways to just dampen my feelings and to take me out of the present moment and to distract me from how I was feeling. And when I became a spiritual student, then I became very aware that I had issues with self-medication, big issues. And because it didn't seem very spiritual and very evolved, I did my self-medicating in secret. And this is a very common thing for a lot of spiritual students, which is why it's so important to me to bring it to the light and to talk about it. And that's what this challenge is all about, bringing it to the light of our awareness so we can do something about it. Instead of just repeating the cycle of self-medication, self-sabotage, and then feeling ashamed. Really deeply ashamed. Because what happens for all of us is we say, I'm not going to do that anymore. And then we just run right out and do it all over again. And then we feel doubly shamed, right? And then we have this feeling of deep shame. What do we want to do? We want to self-medicate to run from that feeling of shame. So it's a really vicious circle, and I circled around in it for years. I self-medicated with food, with alcohol, with cigarettes, with working too much, exercising too much, talking on the phone too much, watching television too much, and many times when I was self-medicating, I was doing several of them at once. And I honestly felt that this was just going to be something I struggled with my whole life. It never really occurred to me that these patterns, these emotional patterns that drove me to the self-medication, that they would ever end. And I see that they have. I really see that they have. Now, I want to be clear. Sometimes do I have a little too much of this or that? Yeah, I do. Who doesn't sometimes want to have a second piece of pie? And sometimes who wouldn't like to have maybe one more glass of wine or something like that? But this is not self-medication. It's a different thing. It's just you're enjoying yourself, you indulge a little too much. That's different than self-medication. Self-medication is really about being able to disconnect from your feelings, to dampen your feelings. That's what smoking is about, drinking, the eating. Of course, you can self-medicate with sex, with masturbation, all kinds of things. And we have a tendency to make whatever it is we're doing really bad. And it's really the worst. We're the worst. But that's not true. And sometimes, of course, people who self-medicate with sex can think, oh, this is just, I'm a sinner, I'm shameful. It's not true. There's just different things that we are drawn to. For some people, it's alcohol. For some people, it's drugs. For some people, it is doing sexual intriguing, getting people's attention, needing somebody to think I'm special or important. There's all kinds of ways that we engage in self-medication. As a spiritual counselor for nearly 20 years, I've worked with people who self-medicate in all kinds of ways. People do it surfing on the web. People do it shopping. People do it cleaning. I always say the cleaning people can come help me clean my house, and then we can talk about it. But it's a real thing that people self-medicate with cleaning. And it's no better than self-medicating with alcohol and things like that, because it's still a big distraction. And you know what? The whole purpose of self-medication is to slow down our spiritual growth. That's right. And that's not what we want to do anymore. We don't want to slow down our spiritual growth. We'd like to increase our spiritual growth so that we're living a life of true joy, right? But it seems impossible when we're caught in this whirlpool, this hamster wheel, going round and round with self-medication. So the way I have recovered myself and all the time and energy and money that I used to put into my self-medication and managing the shame that I felt about it, waking up with hangovers of all kinds, right? Because if you're talking on the phone endlessly for days, going over and over the same sad stories, there's a hangover from that. And if you're exercising way too much, there's a hangover from that. So it can be a hangover from working too much, burning out your adrenals. These are all things I'm familiar with. I really tried a lot of different things. And I've learned that spiritual practice will heal it. Because spiritual practice is self-love in actual form. And what heals the need to self-medicate is self-love, loving ourselves, accepting ourselves. But when we're in a cycle of self-medication and then feeling ashamed and feeling like a loser and we're out of control, we have no control, all of that leads to more self-medication and more shame. So then we are really stuck in a cycle until we decide to do something differently. So that's what this challenge is all about. And I'm so excited to share it with you. So some of the basics here are what I'm going to just cover now. There's a worksheet for each of the 6 days. So you can come to these homework sessions live. You're going to go over your worksheet in the group live. You don't have to share anything if you don't wish to share. You can just listen to other people share. And when you do listen to other people share, have compassion for them, have love for them, because they are courageous. They are willing to change their life, and they are inspiring. They are so inspiring. I love doing this challenge. I love how many breakthroughs people are having in this challenge already. So one other thing I'd like to tell you about the challenge is the very first day of the challenge has the most intensive worksheet. Okay, so that's the one that's going to need the most amount of time. Give yourself a good half hour to fill out that worksheet. And some of the questions are going to really like make you go, oh, wow. And it's intense for some people to fill this out, to have these realizations and to get real about it. But it's so important. And it's so important as spiritual students that we do this together, because it is eliminating shame. It is realizing we are not alone, that you and I are so much alike, and we are all so much alike. And that is deeply healing, because unity is the answer to the problem of separation. So by doing this work together, we are really healing not just ourselves, but all humanity, and this deep sense of shame and separation that is proliferated by our self-sabotage. So we are doing something not just for ourselves, but for everyone when we're doing this work. One thing I can tell you is that in all the years that I felt trapped in the repeating patterns and shame of self-sabotage in the form of self-medication, I can tell you that I would often isolate and do all this self-sabotage in isolation because it's not very spiritual, and I was ashamed. So that was a double whammy for me. And I can tell you that for years, I would go to spiritual classes, right? And have breakthroughs and insights and feel so uplifted. And the whole time I'd be in those classes, I'd be thinking about, on the way home, I'm going to stop and get a bottle of wine, a pack of cigarettes, some beer, some food, something to self-medicate with. And then I would come home from those classes and I would self-medicate with the food, with the alcohol, with the cigarettes, sometimes with all three of them while watching television. So 4 forms of self-sabotage, self-medication all at once. I couldn't find a way to do it even more. I was going for maximum load, and I would stay up way too late, and then I'd have to get up and go to work in the morning, and I'd feel terrible because I'd feel hungover and I'd feel ashamed, and I'd think, oh my God, I'm making progress in these spiritual classes, and then I turn right around and sabotage myself. I am such a loser. And this pattern is so common. When I started talking about it, because I just felt I had to, I felt compelled to by my own inner guidance, people started saying, what? I do that too. I'm a secret smoker. Oh my God, you're a secret smoker? I'm a secret smoker. So I'm not doing those things anymore. And that I never imagined I could get free of it. But I know that it can happen. And every year in Masterful Living, there are people that break free of the secret self-sabotage, the self-medicating with food and alcohol and sex and drugs and all the different ways that we find to do it. Now, of course, there are other ways to self-sabotage besides self-medication, but I'm inviting you to focus on self-medication because you've probably got a few of them if you're anything like me. One of them was fantasy. Hours and hours and hours and hours spent, huge amounts of my life energy were in fantasy. Or just distracting myself, watching television. This is all what all kinds of people are caught up in, and we can break free of it. So let's bring the darkness to the light. We'll do it together. We're healing together. Let's get the shame out of our lives, because that'll be one less thing to propel us to self-medicate. Let's realize how alike we are and celebrate our unity. This is big work. This takes real courage. This is not for the faint of heart. And that's why we do it together. And that's why this challenge is one of the bonus classes for Masterful Living, so that we can do this deep healing work together and lay a foundation for our year that is extraordinary. We're going to have an amazing year. I'm not kidding you. I am so excited for this year, and I am so excited to do this work together. I love you, and I'll see you day 2. Mwah!